Nestled among mist-covered hills in rural Japan, the village of Yomogawa seemed frozen in time. Wooden houses creaked under the weight of ancient roofs, and narrow streets echoed with the silence of a community that rarely welcomed strangers. Kaori, a 28-year-old mother, carried the weight of a loss no one spoke of aloud. Her son, Haru, only 6 months old, had vanished weeks ago. The police scoured the nearby forests, but found nothing beyond cold breezes and twisted branches pointing nowhere. Kaori spent sleepless nights, the empty crib beside her bed like a black hole swallowing her sanity. She clung to routine, washing dishes, sweeping the floor to keep from crumbling, but her eyes always drifted to the window where the darkness seemed to pulse. One night, as the wind howled outside, Kaori heard a sound. Not a baby's cry, but something close. A muffled whimper coming from behind the house. Heart racing, she followed the noise to the backyard. Under the dim moonlight, she spotted an object half hidden among the bushes. It was a cloth doll, small, the size of a baby, with black button eyes that gleamed as if wet. The fabric skin was too soft, almost warm to the touch. Kaori picked it up, feeling a shiver she couldn't explain. The doll smelled like Haru, warm milk and talcum powder. Trembling, she brought it inside and placed it in the crib. When she looked again, the button eyes seemed slightly crooked, as if they'd shifted. The next morning, the village was eerily quiet. Kaori noticed her neighbors, all with distant gazes cradling similar dolls. Mrs. Hayashi, who lived next door, rocked one with an empty smile, murmuring that her son had come back. Kaori tried to ask, but Hayashi only pointed to the hill, where an abandoned factory loomed, its rusted chimneys piercing the sky like broken fingers. "They come from there?" she whispered before shutting her door. Kaori felt a heaviness in her chest, a mix of curiosity and dread. The doll in the crib seemed heavier now, its button eyes following her as she moved through the house. At night, the whimpering returned, louder, but now it came from inside the crib. Kaori no longer slept. The doll in the crib seemed to change daily. Its button eyes, once black and gleaming, now had a grayish hue, as if the light inside them was fading. The stitched mouth, previously a straight line, began to curve into a half-smile. Kaori tried to ignore it, but the doll felt warmer, softer, as if its fabric texture was turning into something alive. At night she heard whispers, words she couldn't understand, but that made her heart race. Worst of all was the smell, the scent of milk and talcum powder now mixed with something damp, like wet earth after rain. Determined to understand, Kaori followed Mrs. Hayashi's advice and trekked to the abandoned factory on the hill. The place was a maze of cracked concrete and rusted machinery, draped in cobwebs that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. In the center of the main warehouse, she found a pile of unfinished dolls, cloth limbs, loose eyes, unsewn faces. But what froze her in place was the sound, a chorus of soft whimpers, like babies crying in unison, echoing off the walls. In the corner, an ancient machine hummed, moving on its own. Black threads spilled from it, slithering across the floor like worms. Kaori felt a touch on her ankle. A half-formed doll gripped her leg with writhing fabric fingers. She fled home, but the doll in the crib looked different. Its face now had sharper, almost human features, with eyes that seemed to blink when she turned away. Kaori began noticing marks on her own skin, faint lines like stitches appearing on her wrists. The entire village seemed infected by this obsession. Neighbors rocked their dolls in silence, and the once quiet streets now thrummed with muffled whimpers. Kaori tried to burn the doll, but the flames only blackened the fabric, leaving the button eyes staring, untouched. Through the window, The factory on the hill looked bigger, as if it had grown overnight. Kaori could no longer tell what was real. The doll in the crib now moved on its own, dragging itself across the floor with a wet, squelching sound, like soaked cloth. Its button eyes were gone, replaced by dark, hollow sockets that seemed to suck the light from the room. Kaori's house reeked of something rotten, not decay, but something alive, something growing. The walls began to crack, and from the fissures, black threads emerged like those in the factory, weaving into indistinct faces. Kaori tried to flee, but the doors wouldn't open, and the windows showed only the silhouette of the factory, now so massive it blotted out the sky. On a moonless night, Kaori returned to the factory, driven by an impulse she couldn't explain. The central warehouse had changed, the machines hummed in a hypnotic rhythm, and the dolls, now numbering in the hundreds, moved like marionettes, their cloth bodies swelling and pulsing. In the center, a larger doll, adult-sized, turned its face toward her. It was Haru, or something mimicking Haru, with features too perfect, eyes too deep. "Mommy," it whispered. But the voice was a chorus of moans echoing inside Kaori's skull. She fell to her knees, feeling the stitches on her skin split open, as if her body were unraveling into threads. Back in the village, no one spoke anymore. The residents, their faces now stitched like dolls, cradled their creations in silence. Kaori, sitting in the crib with Haru's doll, stopped resisting. She hugged it, feeling the warmth of the fabric meld with her skin. The factory on the hill kept growing, its chimneys spewing black threads that drifted like mist, and in every home in Yomagawa, a doll opened its eyes, ready to replace the next empty soul. Thank you for diving into this nightmare. If this story left a hollow ache in your chest, drop a like, subscribe, and share in the comments what disturbed you most. Have you ever seen something you can't explain, something that lingers in the corner of your eye?